Good morning, everyone. Hope everybody's having a great Thursday out there. We are going to get started in a moment. What's going on, Ed, with the dreads on IG? Let me just make sure we got everything set up over here because my TikTok suspension will be ending at about 9 o'clock today. Let's see, starting at 8:51. I can go live. So I'll just set this up so I'm ready. 1 second. As y'all are coming in, you can shout yourselves out. We're going to get started in a moment. Let me just make sure we got everything here in place. Actually, going to be no agenda today. So we are good over on Rumble Studio, YouTube. We are good. X. Let me check X. We're good on X. Let me check for sure. Refreshing here my posts on X. Yes, we are good. Good morning, everybody. Checking in on X. We are live on Facebook. We are good on LinkedIn, as far as I can see. Instagram, good morning to y'all over there. TikTok, we are not live because I'm still suspended until about 43 minutes from now. Then I won't be suspended anymore. We'll let TikTok catch up once I wrote TikTok into this. But I told y'all what we're going to talk about here today. What school doesn't teach and why it does not teach it. So we got a good amount to get to. So let's just get straight into it. Now, I have many times, if you don't know, many times I have trashed the American educational system because the American educational system is trash, even though I am technically, you could say that I am a success story of the educational system. But back in episode 3209 of my podcast, if y'all don't know, I have a show called Work on Your Game, comes out every day. Also in episode 199 for some points of reference. And I've done a lot more than that. But today I want to talk about some specific things the school isn't teaching. I'm going to tell you why school doesn't teach it and why these things matter that are not being taught. And if you really want to learn these things, you have to go outside of the scholastic system to get them because school doesn't teach them at all, or they teach them very ineffectively and inefficiently. And also I'm going to help you understand why school, because the people who work in schools and the people who run the educational system, I mean, these people are not dummies, right? They're allegedly really smart individuals. So why would they not teach some of these things I'm going to tell you about here today? Because the things I'm going to tell you about are things that everybody could benefit from. Everybody could be good with. So Ed said, you have on YouTube so I can watch the live off the app. Yeah, I'm on YouTube. I'm live on YouTube. I got more than one YouTube channel, though, so make sure you go to the right one. And why would the smart people who work in the education system not include these topics into the system? Why do they not do it? I'm going to explain to you why they don't do it, because it will make perfect sense once you understand it. So let's get to it. Number one, entrepreneurship. Number one thing that the school system, the education system, rather, in the United States does not teach is entrepreneurship. They don't teach you how to go and run your own. Definition of an entrepreneur is someone who is starting or running a business venture while taking on greater than normal financial risk. Why do they not teach you this? Because One of the reasons that they don't teach you it is, first of all, entrepreneurship is not for most people. That's one reason why they don't teach you it. If you understand anything about the educational system in America, the current system was created at the time of during the time of what we know as the Industrial Revolution. And during the Industrial Revolution, there were a lot of factories going up, and smart men were coming up with systems and processes that would leverage the efforts of everyday people. They leverage the efforts of people, the physical efforts of people, such as factory workers, to do certain things in a process. Henry Ford is famous for having revolutionized the assembly line. So getting the physical efforts and the physical muscles of men, getting them to follow a process over and over and over again, and they can start mass producing certain tangible goods that people wanted to buy. So this is how business started to become business during the Industrial Revolution. And the companies who ran these industries, or the people who ran the companies who were in these industries, they said, well, the problem that's happening here, or an issue that we were running into, is that a lot of men, because mostly it was men working, they are coming into our industries to work, but they aren't quite trained or conditioned to do what we need them to do. So what could we do? These are very smart people. They said, what could we do so that these men are showing up to the workforce already prepared to at least be open to what we're going to have them doing? So what happened is they went to the educational system, or the educational system was kind of revamped in a way so that it conditioned people to be prepared to do at work what they were already going to be doing in school. So how about if we just take these kids from when they're 5 years old in kindergarten, and let's take them up, let's just say through the 12th grade. So from grade 1 through 12. So for that 12 years at kindergarten, 13 years, let's just condition them to show up somewhere, sit down, shut up, sit at the desk and fold your hands, wait for some person in authority to come tell you what to do, how to do it, when to do it, where to do it, how to think, what questions to ask, or give you all the answers to all the questions. And then we're going to tell you what time you can go to lunch. We're going to tell you what time to go to the bathroom. We're going to tell you what time to come back. And every time you show up, you stamp this thing to show us that you showed up. And every time you leave, you stamp this thing to show us that you left. And that's how we'll track your progress. And if you do a good job of this, then you get a pat on the head or good grades. That's school. And if you do a good job of the same thing when you go to work, then you get a paycheck. All right, that's work. So the educational system, if you think about it, is designed to create automaton humans to go into the workforce and do the same thing that you do. Same thing you did at school, you're going to do at work. Now, this was specifically for the Industrial Revolution when we had factory workers. These days, a lot of people are knowledge workers where you're using your intellectual capacities, allegedly, to do your job. So a lot of you don't work with your hands, but there are still people out there who work with their hands. Over time, there are going to be fewer and fewer of those jobs because there's going to be more machines that take over those jobs, the computers that take over those jobs. Then after that, there are going to be more machines taking over intellectual jobs as well, because artificial intelligence is really good with knowledge-based jobs. So it's going to be a lot of humans losing their jobs based off of that too. So the educational system is designed to produce employees to work at companies. And this is the explanation of my first point. The reason the educational system does not teach entrepreneurship is because the educational system does not want you to become an entrepreneur. It wants you to become a worker. Everybody understand this? It wants you to become a worker because the system was designed to produce ready-made workers that as soon as you got out of school, you were qualified and prepared to go work at a job. Why? Because this would fuel the industry. That's what it's designed. That's what it was designed for back in the Industrial Revolution 100 or so years ago. It is still doing the same thing to this day. It still does the same thing now. Even though, again, a lot of you are more knowledge workers than you are physical labor workers. Most of you who work at it, you have some form of employment. You are using your thought capacity more than you're using your physical muscles. But it's the same idea. The concept has not changed at all. You're doing the exact same thing. Sit down, shut up, wait for someone to tell you what the rules and instructions are. As long as you follow the rules, you keep your job and you get a check. That's how it works. The best students at school usually get the best job offers. Why? Because they are the ones who have shown themselves to be the most prepared to do the show up, sit down, be quiet, follow the rules, follow the instructions, do a really good job of it, and you get paid because of that. That is what the educational system is based on. That's why the best students go get the best job offers. Notice that the best students in school don't go and start businesses. You see that? The best students in school don't go and start businesses. The students who go to school and still go and become entrepreneurs are usually the middle of the road, middle of the pack students that get C's on everything, or the students who drop out of school is not the ones with the straight A's. The ones with the straight A's usually end up getting a job working for the C students who dropped out of school, or the C students who were just average students that nobody paid that much attention to, at least academically. So the risk factor, let's continue another piece about why school doesn't teach entrepreneurship. First of all, as I already said, most people shouldn't become entrepreneurs. For one, the risk factor eliminates about 80% of people from ever seriously partaking in entrepreneurship, because by definition, entrepreneurship incurs some form of risk. Most people are not good at dealing with risk. Two things you need to be an entrepreneur is you need a strong stomach to deal with the uncertainty, the natural uncertainty, and you need big balls because you have to be willing to take risks. Most people don't have either one. And this is the reason why most people shouldn't be entrepreneurs. This is one reason school doesn't teach it, because they're talking to a small percentage of people. So why would you take a whole school curriculum and focus it on something that is only going to apply to maybe 5% of your students? That's an inefficient way of running any type of organization. So on this hand, I can understand why the school system does not teach entrepreneurship. At the same time, let's continue. Entrepreneurship requires taking extreme ownership and responsibility over yourself, even when the things that happen are not your fault and not of your doing. Most human beings, even the ones who get straight A's in school, are not good at taking extreme accountability and extreme responsibility and ownership over their own situation. Most people would rather have someone they can blame for their situation when things go wrong. They'll take all the credit when it's going right, but they want someone to blame when things go wrong. You want to see an example of this? Look at the way people talk about politics. Usually when people talking about politics, what are they doing? They're complaining and blaming either the political side that they don't like, or the politician that they hate, or Congress for doing something else wrong, or the government for being trillions of dollars in debt. Most people like complaining about those things because what it does is it absolves you of any responsibility of setting your own situation up to where nothing that happens in the government is going to have that much of an impact on you positively or negatively. Most people don't want to take on that level of ownership. This is the reason why most people should not be entrepreneurs. That's another reason why most people should not be entrepreneurs. Another thing is when you have employment and something goes wrong at your job, well, you don't have to take all the responsibility. All you got to do is blame the boss. You're not the boss, so just blame the boss. Something's going wrong with your job. You can blame the boss. You can blame the bosses. You can blame whoever is supposed to be paying you. You can blame your supervisor who you hate. There's a whole bunch of people you can blame when things aren't going right for you when you are not the boss. You can just blame whoever the person in charge is. And to be an entrepreneur, you're the person in charge. There's nobody to blame. So when you're an entrepreneur, or let me back up. Most people are not programmed for this style of thinking, what I'm talking about here. I talk about this stuff all the time. But I know when I'm talking about this, I'm not talking to everyone, because most people mentally, they're just not prepared to even think this way. Everybody who has any form of employment, or you have ever had it, you have it because an entrepreneur took a risk and found a way to make it work. That's the only way you can have a job. The only way you can have a job is someone had to start a business. If no one started the business that you work at, then there will be no job for you. So when you hear a Bernie Sanders or AOC or many people in government, I was just listening to Bernie on Joe Rogan, by the way. And for the most part, the things he was saying sounded fine until he got to the end and they start talking about Donald Trump and he starts sounding dumb. But that's neither here nor there. Is that when you hear somebody like Bernie Sanders and others talking about oligarchs and how these big companies are doing this and that, and on the surface, they say things that try to make it seem like these oligarchs who run these companies, these billionaires, quote unquote, that they are just exploiting everybody else and that's how they made their money. But nobody ever talks about, or you rarely hear Bernie talk about, well, one of the reasons that Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates has so much money is because they created a company that employs a whole bunch of people. You never hear Bernie Sanders talk about that there are a whole bunch of people employed at Amazon. Amazon has 1.5 million employees. Did you ever hear Bernie Sanders tell you that? You ever hear AOC say that? There are 1.5 million people who have a job under the umbrella of Amazon. So it kind of makes sense that Jeff Bezos has a whole bunch of money because he has created jobs for 1.5 million people. That if he were to shut down what he did and Amazon didn't exist, then 1.5 million people would be unemployed, or they'd be going and looking for jobs and competing against everybody else who's looking for a job. But that rarely gets mentioned when he's talking about these things, because again, as a politician, this is the game that you have to play. So entrepreneurs create jobs create paychecks. And if there are no jobs and no paychecks, then most people who are employed will have nothing to do. And so the question is, why does school not teach this? Why does school not teach people how to create companies that create jobs, that create paychecks that make life better for everybody else. Why do they not teach this? One reason school doesn't teach entrepreneurship is because school, as I already explained to you, is not designed to make you independent. That's not what school is for. School is not designed to teach you how to be independent. School is designed to teach you how to work within the system. Let's talk about it. When you go to school, how are you rewarded? What makes somebody a good student at school? What makes you a good student at school is that you sit down quietly, you don't disrupt the class, you allow the person in authority, usually the teacher, to say whatever they want to say and do what they want to do. You participate in class. If the teacher asks a question, you answer it. You demonstrate to the person in authority that you are listening to them and that you are absorbing what they say, i.e., when you get a quiz or a test, you are able to regurgitate the information accurately enough that you get good grades on the test. So the teacher likes you because you get an A on the test because you regurgitated everything that the teacher was saying very well. That's why you get an A on the test. And you got to think about this. Your teachers are human beings. So when you get an A on the test, what are you doing? You are validating the skill of the teacher. You're validating that you heard everything that the teacher said, because if the teacher gives a test and everybody on the test gets a D or an F, well, what may the teacher be thinking? The teacher might be thinking, damn, maybe I'm not that good of a teacher because nobody got these questions right. I could have swore I taught this to this class. How's everybody getting a D or F on the test? But if there are a couple students getting A's on the test, which they're regurgitating exactly what the teacher taught them, that validates the teacher. So teachers like students who get A's, not because you getting an A is going to help them go to college. They already went to college. That's one of the reasons that they became a teacher. The reason that teachers like students to get A's is because it personally and on an egotistical level, it validates the teacher because it shows that you were listening, and it stops them from questioning themselves when they got students with D's and F's. So obviously that student is the problem because they're getting a D or F. They're obviously just not that good. They're not that smart. They're not paying attention that much. So I like to think about these things on a psychological level, not just on a tangible level. That's why I'm bringing these things up. School is not designed to make you independent. So when you go to school and you get good grades, you get rewarded by the school and you get touted as the person on the honor roll or the valedictorian, or they put your name up on the wall somewhere on a bulletin board and they give you a trophy or a plaque or a certificate that shows you're doing a very good job as a student. Well, what does that student do? That student moves on. Let's say this is at the K through 12 level. That student moves on and they get an offer to go to a good, quote unquote, college, some prestigious school. At least this is the way it's supposed to go. The best students are supposed to go to the best K through 12 students are supposed to go to the best colleges. But we all know that since they start doing the DEI nonsense, that a lot of the best schools are no longer, the best colleges, are no longer accepting even the best students. That's the way it's supposed to be. And I'm saying this as someone who's generally, I was an average student. As a student, I was pretty average. I wasn't trying to go to Harvard or Princeton or Stanford or Yale. I knew I wasn't that good of a student in high school to even be thinking about those schools. And number two, I didn't want to go to one of those colleges, even if they wanted me, because I didn't want to do this much damn work. Courtney said, I'm not used to this front facing view of you. This is the view you get on Instagram. TikTok, I'm turning back on in about 30 minutes. So I knew I didn't want to go to an Ivy League school, because what I learned or heard about Ivy League schools is that they are very academically rigorous. They're for the best students who are really prepared to do a whole lot of schoolwork to get even better grades. I said, I want to do that. I want to go to a school where I could do a little bit of schoolwork and still get a degree. It was exactly what I did. And that's how I ended up at Penn State. Shout out to Penn State. So school, when you go to college, what do? You do more of the same thing. You show that you're a really good student. You pass all the tests. You do a whole lot of studying more independently now because you got all these other things you could do. You do a good job there. What happens? You get valedictorian. You graduate at the top of your class. You get a high GPA. You get recommendation letters from your professors. And then what do? You go and interview for jobs and you get a really good job offer. The reason why the best students usually go get the best jobs is because why would they opt out of a system that they've been succeeding in? You understand? The school system is designed to send you to the job system. So if you're doing a really good job in the school system, i.e. you're getting high grades in high school, and then you get good marks in college, why would you opt out of that system to go work work as an entrepreneur? Why would you do that? You're successful over here. Why would you just walk away from something you're successful at? It's like Michael Jordan retiring from basketball when he was the best player. Why would you do that? That's why he came back, all right, because he was already dominating. So the best students do not opt out of being an employee. What they do is go find they don't opt out of working within a system and doing what the system tells them to do. They go get a really good job and they do what the job tells them to do until they retire. That's how it works. The average students, or the students who just completely dropped out, flunked out, or were otherwise on some level disengaged, people like myself, we go on to become entrepreneurs. Why is this? Because, again, most students couldn't explain what I'm saying here. They couldn't articulate this. And when I was a student, I could not have explained this, but I understand it now very well, is that when I was in school, I could see the writing on the wall. I'm not one of the best students. And the reason I was an average student, let's just say in college, in high school, I was actually a pretty good student. I had pretty high marks relative to the average high schooler, because I went to what they call a magnet school, and I was like a B student at a magnet school. And if you're a B student at a magnet school, that's like being an A+ student at a normal school. So I had a whole bunch of schools, colleges interested in me, but that's neither here nor there. In college, I was an average student. I went to a college that academically is pretty average. I went to a state school, and I was pretty average. I gave an average effort. I was an average student because I gave an average effort. The reason I gave an average effort is because I knew that the shit that was being taught there was not really where I was trying to go. By the time I got to college, I knew I wanted to play a sport professionally. And as I learned more about it, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I'm looking around at school, and the things I was learning about entrepreneurship were telling me directly that the stuff you learn in school is not going to help you be an entrepreneur. I learned that from Robert Kiyosaki, reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, when I was like a sophomore in college. So after I came across that material, I said, okay, what I'm learning in school is not going to help me go where I want to go anyway. I want to play ball and be an entrepreneur. Nothing that's happening in school is going to help me do either one of those things, at least in class, that is. So I'll do enough to graduate. And that's what I did. I did enough to graduate. I graduated with I believe my GPA was a 2.6. That was my graduation GPA, which was like a C. I was like a C student, average student. People like myself who are disengaged or otherwise not super interested in what's being taught in school, we are already open to and looking for other avenues and other opportunities of what we can do with ourselves and what we can do with our lives. And the reason that we're already open to it and looking is because we can see that if we stay in this lane, and this is not all of us, let me be clear. There are some people who still go the other way. I'll talk about them in a moment. People like myself who I had entrepreneurial bones in me. I just needed somebody to kind of show me, here's what it is, here's how it works, here's what you need to understand, the basics. And once I learned that, I said, this is definitely what I'm going to do. If I hadn't been playing basketball, I would have went straight into entrepreneurship right when I graduated college. I played basketball first, then I got into it. So I delayed it probably by about 5-6 years. And the thing is, people like myself, I knew that if I stayed in that lane and I competed at the work level, job level, with my college classmates and every other college student that was graduating at the same time as me, most of them were better students than I was. They tried harder than I did. They cared more than I did. They did more of the schoolwork than I did. They were better at following the rules and generally respecting authority than I was. I knew they were better at me at all of that stuff. So I could see the writing on the wall unconsciously and say, if I go into this lane against these people, I'm going to lose. I can't win going into this lane. Actually, I could win. I mean, if I wanted to. If I wanted to be a straight A student in college, I could have been one. I chose not to because I didn't want to give the effort. I'd rather play basketball and date girls and go to parties. That's what I chose to do, and I would do it again. If I went to college again, I would do it even more than I did it the first time around. But anyway, as a person who wanted to stand out, I had a level of ambition in me from a child. I knew I wanted to do something that I could stand out and be above the pack. So again, sports was first, entrepreneurship was second. And entrepreneurship, what I liked about it was entrepreneurship is based in selling. And in the sales world, you make money based on your performance, not just based on the fact that you showed up and you were a warm body at the job. A warm body at the job is a person who you show up, and as long as you're there and it looks like you're doing some work, this is how much money you make. That's a salary gig. In the entrepreneurial world, it's you show up and you do whatever it is you're doing, and your pay is related to how you perform and the results that you produce. I said, that's the kind of business that I want to be in. I want to be in the type of business where the money that I make is based on, the way that I perform. If I perform really well, then I should make more money than the people who didn't perform as well as me. And if you flip it, other people perform better than me, then they should be making more money than me. So everything is based on performance, and this makes it a straight up competition. It's straight up a performance competition. I said, that's the kind of business I want to be in. That's the sales world, first of all. And if you're an entrepreneur, you are in sales by default. So every entrepreneur is a salesperson. So when I was a student in college, I started learning about these things because as a student, even though I was a student in college, I often would read books that were not assigned by my teachers because my teachers were not reading books like Robert Kiyosaki. Why the hell would they be reading that? Because the book actually makes fun of, it doesn't make fun, but it puts a spotlight on specifically people who have a whole lot of education. And my college professors, that's exactly how you become a professor. You get a whole lot of education and then you go get a job. The book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, how many of you, any of you who has not read that book, I suggest you go get it and read it. But Robert Kiyosaki is telling an allegorical tale of his actual father, who was the poor dad in the book, who had a whole lot of education, probably had an advanced degree, worked at the school system in the state of Hawaii, where Robert grew up. And later in his life, he was pretty poor and broke. Why? Because he got fired from his job. Job didn't need him anymore, and he had no other skills. He had nowhere else to go. Whereas his rich dad was his best friend's father. His best friend's father had dropped out of school, didn't go to college, didn't have a degree or any prestigious educational accomplishments, but he became an entrepreneur. He owned several businesses in the area and around the state, and he was rich. He was financially very well off, even though he didn't have a whole lot of education. And Robert Kiyosaki uses the book to explain that the school system in America teaches you to go get a job, get good grades, get a degree so you can get a good job and you'll be good for the rest of your life. But his own father was an example of that not being true. Whereas his rich dad, his best friend's dad, didn't go to school, didn't get a degree, didn't get a job, and he became the more successful person later on in life. So Robert Kiyosaki's book is basically flipping this whole script upside down and saying, well, they tell you that this is the way you become successful when, in my experience, is actually the other way. And then the book is just not an anecdotal experience of Robert Kiyosaki. The book wouldn't have taken off if it was just about his personal experience. What he goes on to do is explain why what he saw in his personal experience was actually true on the bigger picture. And he explained, if you just go to school, they teach you how to show up at your job, you work for money. The problem is eventually, if they decide they don't want to pay you the money anymore and you haven't developed any other skills, then what will you do? And the answer is you ain't gonna do shit but be poor and broke, which is what happened to his own dad. Whereas on the other hand, if you go and start businesses and you learn entrepreneurship, you can actually start your own businesses. You can run your own entities. You can own assets that put money in your pocket. And now instead of you as a person being your own asset, and when you work full time at a job and that's the only thing that you do, you're the asset. Asset is something that puts money in your pocket. So that means you go to work, they put money in your pocket. You go to work again, they put more money in your pocket. Every time you go to work, you get money in your pocket. The problem is, in order for you to keep putting money in your pocket, you personally, physically, must keep going to work. Well, what happens if you go on vacation? Well, you might not get paid. What happens if you get sick? You might not get paid. What happens if you quit or you get fired? You're not getting paid at all. What if they decide we don't want to pay you this much anymore? We're going to pay you about 70% of what we were paying you before. And if you don't want that, then you are fired. What do? You don't have any other option because the only way that you can make money, i.e. the only asset you have is yourself. Robert Kiyosaki's book is explaining that instead of you being the only asset, he's not telling you not to work. What he's saying is if you work, instead of just working for $1, i.e. an hour equals this much money, instead work to build assets so that even when you stop working, that asset that you built is still putting money in your pocket and you don't have to physically do the work yourself. When you own a business, you own an asset because the business can make money even if you're not working. So you go to sleep at night, you wake up in the morning, you have more money than you had before because the asset was working while you were sleeping. Now, one of the ways he talks about it, Robert Kiyosaki specifically, he uses real estate as the vehicle for his point. And I never got into the real estate industry. However, I understood the concept of you don't have to do it through real estate. He said you just need assets. So what can be an asset? Real estate is not the only asset. If you write a book and you market the book can make sales even when you are not actively writing the book anymore. You can write a book one time and 10 years later, people are still buying the book. That book becomes an asset. You can create a course or a program 10 years after you created the course. You're not working on it anymore, but people can still buy it. You can still make money. So you don't have to do the work every single time in order for that thing to be an asset. That was the concept. And as soon as I understood that, I said, okay, this is what I need to be doing. I need to figure out a way to do that. Now, I got introduced when I was in college to this concept called network marketing. Many of you have probably heard of it. Some of you may have partaken. And network marketing, also known as multi-level marketing. Some people call it pyramid scheme, call it whatever you want to call it. I didn't build a career in network marketing. I have no network marketing opportunity to offer you. I'm not in network marketing, but my experience in network marketing was my entree into understanding how you can build an asset. Because in network marketing, the asset that you build is you build a team. You get other people on your team and they go sell whatever the product happens to be. And every time a sale of the product happens by somebody on your team, you get some of the money, even though you didn't do any of the work. All you did was build a team of people. And every time they make a sale, you make some money. And the concept made perfect sense to me. I said, I need to be doing something like this. Even though I did not become a network marketer, I said, even though I didn't go into real estate like Robert Kiyosaki, and I didn't go into network marketing like what it showed me, I understood the concept. I said, this concept works. This makes perfect sense. This is what I need to be doing. Because if I just go and get a job and work, the problem is, what if I don't want to work? What if I don't like the job? What if I hate my job? Now I just got to go to it every day because that's the only way I can pay my bills. I don't want to live like that. And to get anecdotal, my parents worked. My parents they both had 9 to 5 jobs, essentially. Both of them did some small business things, but they were not, at heart, neither of my parents were entrepreneurs. At heart, my parents were employees who would do entrepreneurial things. You know, they had their side hustles and side gigs and things they would do, even sometimes all the time. But in their minds, they were both employees, is the best way I can explain it. And both of my parents, I would see that they went to work because they knew they needed to go to work, not because they liked going to work. So, for example, when I do these live streams every day, I'm not contractually obligated to do this. All right? Nobody's forcing me to record my show called Work on Your Game. This comes out every day for now 3,000 days in a row. Nobody's making me do this. I do this because I like doing it. I enjoy doing this. I'm consistent in doing it because I enjoy doing it. But I'm not forced to do this. I don't hate doing it. I'm not sitting here like, I do these live starting at 8 o'clock. I'm not sitting at the computer or at my desk at 7:55 like, damn it, I got to do this again. I hate doing this. I'm never thinking that about the things that I do work-wise. I enjoy every piece of my work. My parents, I know they didn't enjoy their work. They didn't really bitch about it or complain about it, definitely not to their kids. But I knew what kind of work they did, and I knew how I could just read their energy, especially my mom. I could read her energy about when she didn't like some things that were happening at her work. My dad didn't really express it verbally, but I went to my dad's job. My dad worked with his hands. All right. My dad worked with his hands and he did actual manual labor. It wasn't like back breaking labor, but it was manual labor. I saw where he worked. I went and worked not with him, but at his job when I was like 14 years old or something like that. This was not glamorous work. All right. This is get your hands dirty, no dirt under your fingernails that doesn't come out no matter how many times you wash your hands. That was the kind of work my dad did. So I know this was not glamorous type of work. So I was thinking to myself when I was in college and I read Robert Kiyosaki, well, why would I want to sign up for that kind of lifestyle? Because that's what my parents do. So if I go and get a degree and get a job, maybe I'll do a job that's a little bit higher level than what they're doing, but it's still the same concept. I'm going to be working for somebody, for somebody who I might not like, with a bunch of people who I might not like, doing work that I don't even like, but I'm doing it all so I can get a paycheck. All right, why would I want to consign myself to doing that for the next 40 years the way my parents are? I didn't want to do that. So my mind was open. Now, I didn't have an answer to the problem, but my mind was open. What can I do? Now, again, I was an anomaly in that I got to go play a professional sport. But even playing professional sports, at some point you stop playing. So what else are you going to do? So my mind was open and asking myself, what am I going to do after sports? And who knew how long sports was going to last? Most athletic careers are over before you turn the age of 30. So don't be fooled by, you see Tom Brady or Kobe Bryant and they play till they're 40 something years old. Most athletes don't make it anywhere close to that far. So I was already thinking in my mind, what am I going to do? Because I know this route from school to being a professional and having a good job, that ain't me. I knew that wasn't going to work out. So I was already open. So school, continuing what I was saying here, school is not designed to make you independent. School is not designed to teach you how to become independently wealthy. There's another piece of it that y'all got to get. School is not designed to make you independently wealthy. It's not designed to make you financially independent at all. School. Now you might be like, well, what does school have to do with that, Dre? I'm talking K through 12 school, by the way. So even if you didn't go to college, I'm talking to everybody. School is not designed to help you become financially independent. Why? Because think about it. What did I just tell you about the Industrial Revolution and how school was altered to make sure that it was designed, rather, to make sure that you were prepared to go work at a job and do what the boss told you to do? Why would school set you up for that so that you can go get a job, work at the factory, and now you're doing a good job for the factory and helping them out. But the factory understood something. Well, listen, these are independent adults. All right. These people have lives and they theoretically could do anything that they want to do. So how do we make sure that they stay working for us? Because, yeah, you're a good worker, but how do we make sure this good worker doesn't quit? Well, this is what a job is. They pay you. When I was doing network marketing, the people on the stage would say having a job, JOB stands for just over broke. That's the phrase they would use, just over broke. And these days, people should probably bring that phrase back, because I hear a lot of people when they're talking shit about the billionaires, quote unquote, and the oligarchs, they don't say that, but basically what they say is the big billionaires who own these companies, they are exploiting the workers by not paying them enough money. This is where you get the living wage, and they got to raise the minimum wage, and everybody should be making this much money. And the billionaires don't have to take home this much. They don't have to make $100 million a year. They can make $50 million. They can pay everybody more money. And you get these whole conversations. The whole concept, this is 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, that the network marketing guys would say to the audience that I was in. They would say, a job is designed to pay you just enough money that you don't quit, and you do just enough work that they don't fire you. And that's the situation that everybody agrees to. And I'm telling you all that to say this, because I believe that to be true. It's still true to this day, is that school sets you up to go get a job. And the reason that the job pays you just enough money that you don't quit is so that they pay you enough that you can take care of your food, clothing, shelter, but not enough that you have enough money that you can quit and go do whatever you want to do. They pay you enough to keep you right there locked into their system, because they need you to work so that they can keep making profits. So if you want to say that the big companies are exploiting their workers in this context, I would say that's true. That is what they're doing. Because if you're working at a job that you don't really like, but you also aren't making enough money that you can afford to quit, well, they got you trapped. That's a trap. That's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like a trap. So all school is designed to do is to teach you to do the same thing as an adult that they had you doing as a kid. As I already said, sit down, shut up, do what they tell you to do. Keep doing it till I tell you to stop doing it. Go eat lunch when I tell you to eat lunch. Come back when I tell you to come back. And when I tell you to go home, go home. And tomorrow come back, do the same thing over again. And if you do it properly, I'll give you a check. And in school, the only difference is if you do it properly, you get good grades. And at work, the difference is they replace the report card with a paycheck. That's the only difference. The system in general, this is the way that it works. So here's the next thing, because I'm supposed to be telling you what school doesn't teach you. I only told you one thing. First one was entrepreneurship. Here's the second one. Second one is sales. School doesn't teach you how to sell. They should teach you how to sell, but they can't for several reasons. One reason why school can't teach you how to sell is because to teach you how to sell, they need someone who actually knows how to sell. You can't have a teacher who is a full-time teacher of some topic that's not sales teaching you how to sell, because they don't know how to sell. They would have to get an actual salesperson to come to the school and teach you how to sell. The problem is actual salespeople would never take a job working at a school, because the school can't pay a true salesperson, someone who's actually good. They can't pay a true salesperson enough money to make that make sense for the salesperson. I'm a good salesperson. I know how to sell. I can sell low ticket items. I can sell high ticket items. I've sold items from $50,000 down to $5. I know how to sell. The problem is no school could hire me to be a teacher of a class, because you can't pay me enough money. I can make more money just doing my sales than I can make sitting in front of a classroom of 20-year-olds trying to tell them how to sell. Now, we could work something out. University of Miami, y'all call me. FIU, call me. Barry University, FAU, what other schools are out here? Whatever schools in South Florida, you call me, maybe we can work it out. But the reason why they don't teach sales in school, because they don't have any salespeople to teach. Who's going to teach it? How can you learn sales in school? You can't. There ain't no salespeople. And the bedrock of entrepreneurship is sales, by the way. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, the bedrock is you must learn how to sell. You got to sell ideas. You got to sell yourself. You got to sell people. You got to sell your products. You got to sell your services. Even if you got a bunch of people working for you, you got to sell them while working for you. So you got to keep selling when you're an entrepreneur. That is the basis of the game. You got to sell customers, clients, prospects, staff, everybody you're working with. You got to sell to government, sell collaboration partners, joint venture partners, everybody you're involved with, your vendors. You got to sell everybody. Okay. And if you can't sell, you can't be an entrepreneur. You can't. Not you shouldn't. You can't. So if you are good at selling, or you learn how to sell, you have the potential to get involved in entrepreneurship. And anybody who can sell, again, as I said, they had a potential to get into the game. So sales is an essential tool. Okay. Operating a business is a different skill than selling. But in order to have a business to operate, you got to be able to sell. anyone who knows how to operate a business but doesn't know how to sell, you won't have a business for long. You better have a salesperson working with you. So if you see people working together in a business, you got the salesperson and you got the operations person. So any of you read books about Apple, for example, you had Steve Jobs and you had Steve Wozniak. Steve Wozniak was a good, as far as operating, as far as putting the products together, he was pretty good at that. Steve Jobs was a salesman. All right, this is the reason why when he was alive, when the iPod came out, when the iPhone came out, when the iPad came out, Steve Jobs was on stage, doing the selling and letting you know, here's that new product. And by the way, those of y'all who weren't here, it was either yesterday or the day before, I was telling you to go on YouTube and look up the presentation of when Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone. It's probably the most famous marketing presentation in history. Go look up that presentation. It's not that long. Where he pulls the iPhone out of his pocket and shows people the iPhone for the first time. And since most of you are using, almost all of you have a smartphone, even if it's not an iPhone, you should know the history of where that product came from and how he introduced it and why people got so excited about it. Steve Jobs was a salesman. Like, one of the reasons why he's so famous, he was a salesperson. Robert Kiyosaki, salesperson. The most famous people, Donald Trump, salesperson. The most famous people you know are really good salespeople. P. Diddy, salesperson. He's a salesman. That's one of the reasons why he's famous, because he knows how to sell. And people who are not good salespeople, they may get a chance to get to a certain point, but they end up failing. If you want to win the presidential election in the United States of America, you better be a damn good salesperson. Barack Obama was a great salesperson. He ain't as good as Trump, as far as I'm concerned, but he is very good. That's why he won 2 elections. You can't win 2 elections without being a good salesperson. You're trying to sell yourself to 300 million people and you win, or you have to be a really good salesperson. Kamala Harris, terrible salesperson. That's the reason why she didn't win. She is not a salesperson. She doesn't have a sales bone in her body. That's why she's never going to become president of the United States, because she can't sell. That's the main reason. George W. Bush, great salesperson. Bill Clinton, great salesperson. Hillary Clinton, not too good. Not really. Joe Biden, not a good salesperson. But he had a good strategy. He had a really good strategy, was to sell people on being against Donald Trump. That's how he won in 2020. Quote unquote won. Anyway, sales is an essential tool. Another reason why school doesn't teach sales is, again, because anybody who's really good at selling, any of you who's listening to this right now, if you're really good at selling, you would never have a job as a fucking school teacher. Why would you be teaching school if you can sell? It makes no sense. Why would you sell yourself short by working at a school when you could be out actually selling something that makes you a whole lot more money? You wouldn't do it. So salespeople are out there selling shit. All right, that's what they do. Sales is the oldest and is the highest paying profession in the world. Sales. You want the highest paying job you could possibly get. Is not being a doctor, is not being an engineer, is not being a coder, is not coming up with some AI software. The highest paying job in the world is salesperson. Did everybody hear me? Highest paying job in the world is a salesperson. You want to make more money, learn how to sell. It doesn't matter what you sell. If you know how to sell, you always have an opportunity. All right, any of you listening to this right now and you're looking at your pockets in your bank account and there's $0 in there, there's negative dollars in there. As long as you know how to sell, you got a chance. That's the fact. As long as you know how to sell, you got a chance. You could be at 0 right now. You could be at $1 million in 6 months if you know how to sell. As long as you know how to sell, you have an opportunity. Now, if you can't sell, now that's a different story. If you can't sell, then you got to go find yourself a good job and hope that they keep you and don't reduce your pay or replace you with somebody else and hope you keep the job if you can't sell. But if you can sell, you can write your own check. Right? Literally, you can write your own check. So if you're good at selling and you can teach it to everybody else, again, you would never limit your income potential by being a teacher. You wouldn't do it. You would be a teacher like of your own thing. I teach, but I wouldn't work at a school as a teacher. Why would I do that? And then I got somebody going to tell me what to do when I could sell 10 times better than you and you're my boss. Are you out of your fucking mind? No way. That's not happening. Anyway, third thing, the school doesn't teach. And why school doesn't teach it. So I gave you 2 so far. They don't teach you entrepreneurship. They don't teach you how to sell. Third thing school doesn't teach you is personal finance. School does not teach you personal finance. Now, of the 3 that I've given you so far, the first 2, it makes perfect practical sense why school doesn't teach it. Now, what is the practical reason why school would not teach you personal finance? And when I say personal finance, I don't mean any complicated financial models or anything like that. You don't have to be an economist. I'm not that. You don't have to be a financial advisor or an accountant. I'm not either of those things. You don't have to need to have an economics degree. I don't have that either. When I say personal finance, I mean simple things like understanding your own money, your own dollars, how to best allocate your dollars to put yourself in the best financial position for the future, so that you're ready to exit the workforce at some point, such as through retirement, something like that. That's what I mean when I say personal finance. I'm not talking about you knowing anything advanced when it comes to personal finance. This is one the school intentionally does not teach. Now, why does school intentionally not teach you personal finance? As I just said, you don't need to have any expert understanding of things like tariffs or taxes or inflation or supply and demand curves to understand personal. That's not what this is. Again, it's simple things like your own money, how you're using your own money, what to do with it, how to grow it, how to keep it, how to make sure it's not getting less and less every day through inflation. Simple things like that. All right. Everyone would agree that everyone could benefit from having this as an ability. I think everybody agrees this is a good thing to have as a skill if you can. Let me see if we can bring TikTok back in. We're 1 minute away from my suspension ending. So we're going to have a suspension ending party in like 1 minute. And I will start my live on TikTok. Let's see if I can start it now. July 10th, 8:51. I guess we got to wait like 30 seconds. Anyway, let's continue what I'm saying. Some of you who had parents, some of you were lucky enough to have parents who understood the value of personal finance, and they actually understood personal finance and they taught it to you. Personally, my parents didn't understand personal finance. They never talked about it. We never talked about money. If we talked about money, it was in the mindset of scarcity. So many of you probably could relate to that situation. I would guess 80% of parents don't understand personal finance. I'm talking about our parents, those of you who are adults now. Our parents didn't understand personal finance, didn't teach it to us. And if you know it now, then either you were one of the 20% who your parents did teach it to you, or maybe you ran into someone who did teach it, or if you're like me, you just have to learn it on your own. All right. And I'm not on TikTok just yet. Not yet. Let me see. My suspension lift. All right. They lifted my suspension. Let me just change the title on TikTok and let's see if I can get back on here. But I'm going to continue what I'm saying. I'm going to continue on the same topic here. Let's see. Can we start? 3, 2, 1. All right. It says I'm back on TikTok. So we'll see if it populates. So I am officially back on TikTok right now, but I'm going to continue the same point. I'm going to give TikTok like 30 seconds to populate. Then I'll continue what I'm telling you all. Actually, no, I'm not giving them 30 seconds. I'm giving them 10 seconds. Let's get to it. So those of you who are watching on TikTok, if you're coming in on TikTok, I'm continuing what I've already been talking about. We already been going today on Instagram, YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So now we're just dropping you all into the NX. We're just dropping you all into the conversation here about what we're talking about here today is what school does not teach and why school does not teach it. That's the topic. I didn't actually put that in here for y'all on TikTok, but that's the topic. So some of you had parents who understood personal finance and they helped you out by telling you what it was from the beginning. My parents didn't know it and they didn't teach it. I learned it when I was an adult. I started learning about personal finance. And again, I'm talking about basic stuff. I'm not talking any type of advanced things. And you had to come across it later on. Maybe you didn't come across it at all. The good news for all of us in this latter group is that we, as parents, should not make the same mistake that our parents made, and they just didn't know. It wasn't even a mistake. They just didn't know what they didn't know. These days, in the world that all of us are in, any of you who's a parent now, if you have a child who's under the age of 18 today, any of you, we have access to so much more information that there is no reason why we cannot teach personal finance to our kids because we got all the information. You don't have to know anything. You don't even have to have gone to college to understand personal finance. Again, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, his rich dad understood these things. His rich dad hadn't gone to college. You don't learn this stuff in college. Technically, you can, but really you don't. Technically, you can learn this stuff in college, but that's not really where you learn it. A key thing I want you all to get is an undercurrent through line of everything that I've been saying here is that a lot of the things that I've been talking about here today, entrepreneurship, and sales and personal finance. These things are things that you learn on your own. You must be of independent study to learn these things. You don't learn these things at school. And there's nobody who's going to sit you down and force you to take this material in. You must go and choose to get this information. I learned entrepreneurship because I chose to learn about entrepreneurship. I got interested and I went and got the books and read the books on my own and applied what I learned independently on my own volition. Same thing when it came to sales. There was no class in school on sales. And again, who was going to teach it? There's no good salespeople working at a school. And when it came to personal finance, they're not teaching us. There's economics class. I took an econ class in college because you had to get the business degree. You had to take an econ class. But the economics professor was not telling us about personal finance. He was talking about the economy. That's what he was talking about. I don't give a damn about the economy. What I care about is my personal economy. There was nobody in school teaching that. So all of these things that I'm talking about here, folks, you must choose personally on your own volition to go out and learn these things. There's nobody who's going to force you to get any of this information. If you don't want to get it, you can go through your whole life not knowing it, if that's what you want to do. And again, you could be Robert Kiyosaki's poor dad, his actual dad, who went to school, got a degree, had all the prestigious plaques hanging up on the wall, got a job, worked at the job for several years, got kicked out of his job when he was older, didn't have any plan B, and he ended up poor and pretty much a nobody, simply because he only had one skill. And as soon as that skill was no longer valued, he had no recourse. He had no plan B. This is what happens if you don't go get your own self-education. This is the piece that I want y'all to get of everything that I'm talking about here. I'm not even finished on this third point. By the way, those of you who are watching on TikTok, welcome back, or y'all can welcome me back. I've been suspended for the last week, ever since last Thursday, and y'all can like the live. Please like the live on TikTok. I will stay on here through the hour, the 9 o'clock hour, and we'll just have some open discussion when I get done with my points here. What we're talking about here today, those of y'all watching on TikTok, we are talking about the things that school does not teach and why school doesn't teach them. So I'm actually wrapping up the third point here. I only gave 3 points, but after I finish wrapping up this third point, I will recap what I said for those of you who are on TikTok who missed it. But last week, just to recap, those of y'all don't know, I got kicked off of TikTok. I lost my appeal. I got suspended because I used a phrase probably 6 or 7 times in the live stream with no warning from TikTok to kick me off. The phrase that I used was the title to that Chris Brown song back in the day. And y'all know the song I'm talking about, because I was talking about the Diddy outcome, and I was talking about his 2 victims, Cassie and quote unquote Jane. And I used a certain term that was the title of a song that Chris Brown made years ago. And I said it too many times. TikTok didn't like it. That's how I got suspended. Yeah. So I'm not going to say that word again, but tomorrow we are going to finish what I was talking about when it came to that P. Diddy trial. I will complete my thoughts on that. So that caught y'all up on TikTok. Let me continue what I'm saying to people who've been watching me since 8 o'clock this morning on the other apps. By the way, if you ever see me not streaming live on TikTok, assuming that I'm still alive, that means I'm on Instagram, YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So y'all just make sure you follow me on at least one other platform. So if I ever disappear off TikTok and you don't know why or what happened, I probably got suspended and I'm on one of these other apps. This is, by the way, my 14th suspension from TikTok since last August. That's not a joke. I've been suspended 14 different times. Now, sometimes I appealed and I won. Sometimes I appealed and I lost. So this time I lost. So that's why I wasn't here for the last week. So continuing where I was. If you had parents who taught you this stuff, you had it from youth. Congratulations to you. I wish I knew this stuff from you. I didn't learn it till I was an adult. Good news is all of us who have kids today, all the information is out there, easily accessible. We can go get it and we can teach it to our kids now, and we don't have to worry about being ignorant of something that we just never had access to. My parents didn't have access to this kind of information, and where would they have gotten it from? No, either you had somebody who knew it and told you, and you got it. But if you didn't have anybody around you who knew anything about personal finance, you would have no reason to it doesn't even come into your mind. I mean, my parents understood, you get a check, you got this much money, we can spend this much on the budget and this much on groceries, etc. When I was a kid, my parents would walk to the grocery store because we didn't have a car for many years. Like the first time my family had a car consistently was my dad got a car. I was probably, how old was I? I'd say maybe 12. But the first 12 years of my life, we didn't have a car. So we would walk, and I would go with my mom or my dad. They went to the grocery store. I would usually walk with them. And I don't know how my dad did it, but the way my mom did it, when we would go to the grocery store, my mom would have in a blank envelope, like the back of a letter size envelope, and she would have an ink pen. And every time she put something in the grocery cart, she would write down how much the thing was. And my mom understood how much the tax was. At the time, I think tax was like 6% sales tax. So every time she put something in the grocery cart, if she put 1 or 2 of it in there, she would put the amount of it, and she would add in the sales tax, and she would just keep a running total. She would just keep adding in the numbers. So she knew exactly how much money she was going to have to spend based on what was in the cart. And sometimes she would take things out, and she would just have a running total because she knew exactly how much money she had. And she knew, all right, I can't go over this budget, so I got to get everything I need based on this budget. And she would keep a running total in her head the whole time, not in her head, on the back of this envelope the whole time we were in the grocery store. I'm saying that to say that's as far as my parents went when it came to personal finance. I never heard my dad talk about money at all. I mean, I knew he worked for money, and my mom never talked about it either. She would just write that down and I would see it, but she wasn't explaining it to me or anything like that. So personal finance, folks, again, is understanding simple concepts like paying yourself first, something that a lot of people don't understand. Concept of paying yourself first is putting some of your money, when you get a check, putting it into something that will help you build, or something that is already an asset now so that it will pay you more money in the future. You can't just take every dollar that you make and put it towards your expenses, because then you're just going to have money, not have money, have money, not have money. And you're in this cycle that never ends. So that's what paying yourself first means. Keeping and multiplying your money is another one. And multiplying your money can happen through several ways. One of them is to own assets to put money in your pocket. This is not financial advice, by the way. Please speak to a trusted and licensed financial advisor for any financial advice that you tend to follow. We're just talking here theoretically. Things that can multiply your money and putting yourself in a position to financially prosper, not only during your prime earning years, the years when you have the knowledge and you have the physical ability to go out and hustle and work and do your stuff. Of course, you're going to make money in that time. Of course, you should make money in that time. But also, how do you continue to make money even when you start to slow down? If you get towards retirement age, or you're no longer working as hard, or maybe you just don't have the energy to work as hard, or you just get pushed out at some point. How do you make sure that in your post-working years you can still make money? And if you want to, maybe set up the next generations of your family for financial success based on things that you did. In other words, do you want your kids to have money when they first come into the workforce? They already have money. You want your kids to have money when they go to college. You want your kids' college to be paid for up front, so they don't have to pay for it the way maybe you had to pay for it, or take out loans, et cetera, et cetera. When I say personal finance, these are the things that I'm talking about. How can you set up your next generations? Now, my question is, why does school not teach any of these things? That's my question. Why does school not teach things like how to pay yourself first? Why doesn't school tell you that? How to pay yourself first? Why isn't that a basic thing? How to make sure that some of the money that you make goes somewhere other than just paying your bills? Why does school not teach that? This is just an open question, a rhetorical question. I just want you all to think about. That's one. Another thing, why does school not teach you how to keep and multiply your money? School can teach you how to spend money. You go to college, you're spending money. You got to pay the school to go to school, the college that is. Why do they not teach you how to keep and multiply your money? They don't teach you that. And number three, why do they not teach you how to set yourself up to own assets that put money in your pocket at all? Why don't they teach you that? Why don't they even teach you what an asset is? Something that puts money in your pocket. I'm sure there are some classes in school that somebody's talking about it. But why is there not a whole class on this? There should be a whole class just on assets. How do you build an asset? How do you create an asset? How do you own an asset? How do you get ownership of an asset? How do you make sure you have stuff that puts money in your pocket even when you're not working? Why does school not teach this? Why is this not part of the normal educational curriculum in the United States of America is what I'm saying. I'm not saying there's not a single teacher in the world who doesn't talk about it. I'm sure some of you may have a teacher who talked about it. Some of you may have taken some entrepreneurial class with an exceptional professor who talked about it. I'm asking, why is this not part of the normal educational setup in the United States of America? That's my question. Why is it not? Is my question. Why don't they talk to you about setting yourself up to prosper after your prime earning years are over? Why don't they talk about this stuff? There are people who talk about it, but they're not in schools. They're not working at K through 12s. They're not working at colleges. Why are they not talking about this stuff? I remember when I was talking to one of my old college coaches, and he's probably 30 years older than me. I was talking to him this is probably about 10 or so years ago. And I was asking him how he was doing, et cetera, et cetera. He was down in Florida. He had moved to some retirement area and stuff. He's playing golf every day. Things you do when you're retired. And he said, man, one thing that I wish, he said this to me, he said, Dre, one thing that I wish I had thought about and did when I was younger was think about what I'm going to do after I retire and how do I make sure I'm set up financially. And now at this age, he was probably 60, 65, something like that. He was like, now I'm figuring it out and trying to put pieces in place now. But I should have thought about this when I was like 40 or 30. And he was telling that to me to say, Dre, you need to think about it now, because one day you're going to be around that age and you want to make sure you got your shit in place. You got your stuff together. So these are things they don't teach in schools. And this guy had worked at a college. He was my college coach. He had a job at the college. They don't teach this in colleges. And he worked in the admissions office as well as he was the coach of the basketball team. And one more point, and then we'll get to the questions. Most teachers have not been taught these things. Therefore, they can't teach you. This is one of the reasons why they don't teach these in school, because the teachers don't know. So how are they going to tell it to you? No school system curriculum is going to okay personal finance being taught to students, because here's what happens. Here's what happens just in general. We're just talking about money, because the three things I talked about here today all had to do with money. Entrepreneurship, sales, and personal finance all have to do with money. School doesn't teach you a lot of things about money because they don't want you to have control of your money, how you make your money, or put yourself in a position to have unlimited potential when it comes to money. The educational system in America does not want you to be in that position. Why is this? They don't want you to be in that position because if you get into that position, then you don't have to listen to the teachers. No disrespect to the teachers who are listening to this. This is not a diss of you personally. This is a diss of the system that you work in. The system does not want you to be independent, especially when it comes to money, because if you're independent when it comes to money, they can't control you. They can't tell you what to do. They can't say, hey, get the jab and wear the mask or we're going to fire you from your job. See, there are some people who didn't want to get the jab and didn't want to wear the mask when they had that virus a few years ago, but you got the jab and you wore the mask simply because you couldn't afford to lose your job. But if you were in a position where it didn't matter if you lost your job, you would have said, I'm not wearing the mask and I'm not getting the jab. Go ahead, fire me. I'm good. If you fire me, I'm good. See, if you were in that position, then you wouldn't have to listen. The system does not want you in a position where you are independent, because when you're independent, they can't control you. They can't tell you what to do. And when you can't tell people what to do, now you got to deal with them fairly. And when you have to deal with people fairly, you can't exploit them. So any situation in which people think that someone else is being exploited, all you got to do is look at those people who you feel like are being exploited and ask yourself, how much power do they have? Because if they have power, then they couldn't be exploited. See, when you have power, you can't be exploited. It's not possible. Only way you can exploit somebody is when they don't have power. And the system in the United States of America, remember that we're in a capitalist society. In a capitalist society, the dollar has the final say. Everything comes down to the dollar in a capitalist society. You don't have to like that, but you should accept it if you live in America. And if you're in a capitalist society and you understand everything comes down to a dollar, which you should, then what you should do is best prepare yourself to be able to get a dollar. All right. The better you are at getting dollars, the more power you have in a capitalist society. Even if you have $0 right now, if you're good at getting dollars, i.e. you know how to sell, you know how to create assets. If you know how to sell, then you can get dollars. Even if you have no dollars right now, if you know how to sell, you have the power, and you know you have the power in your own mind. You can't be controlled, because if somebody says you can't do anything over here, you can't come over here, you're fired from here, that's okay, because you can go out into the open market and you can make money if you know how to sell. But if you can't sell, well, you got to do what you're told, because the people who can sell, i.e. the entrepreneurs who started the company that you work for, they have more power than you have, because they can go get a dollar easier and faster and more consistently and more predictably than you can. This is what you need to understand about capitalism, everybody. Again, I'm not asking you whether you like it or you don't like it. I'm telling you the reality of the situation. That in a capitalistic society, you must be able to get a dollar. If you can get a dollar, you're good. At least emotionally, you know you're good because you can go make money. But if you can't, they own you. And that's what it is. They own you. So the three things that school does not teach, for those of you who didn't catch it, there are three things that the school system does not teach. And I'm talking about the general school system in the United States of America. The three things that they don't teach. Number one, they don't teach you how to be an entrepreneur, to where you can start your own business, run your own entity while taking on greater than normal financial risk. They don't want to teach you that because the educational system was designed to create employees. Number two thing they don't teach you is how to sell. Sales are directly connected to entrepreneurship. When you're good at selling, you can be an entrepreneur. If you cannot sell, you cannot be an entrepreneur. Doesn't mean you can't operate a business, have somebody else sell, but you got to sell them on selling for you. Even if you're not the salesperson, you got to sell the salesperson to work for you. And you got to show them where there's an opportunity. So sales is number two thing they don't teach. They don't teach that at school because there are no qualified salespeople who can teach you how to sell at a school. All the good salespeople are working independently because they can make a lot more money than they can make working at a K through 12 or at a college. And number three thing they don't teach you is personal finance. How to keep your money, how to multiply your money, how to protect your money, how to pay yourself first, how to make sure your money is not coming in one pocket and out the other because you're just taking all your money and paying bills. They don't teach you these kind of things because they don't want you to be financially independent. They want you to be financially dependent. And when you're financially dependent, they own you, they control you, and they can dictate everything that you do. So if you have a job and you feel like the job is dictating your life, that's the way it's supposed to be. That's what they're trying to do. That's the goal. They want to dictate your life. And the way they dictate your life is by having you on the hook financially to where you can't do anything other than work at the job because you need the check. And therefore, they'll just keep making you do stuff that you don't really want to do. Your cost of living is going up, but your wages are not going up fast enough. This is where the squeeze comes in. This is when people start talking about the living wage. And in this context, I understand the concept of the living wage. It is a real thing. It is a real thing that people want a living wage, and they're arguing that the job should pay more money because the job has enough money to pay everybody and the CEOs don't have to take as much home as they are. I understand it on both sides, but on the side of the people who want the living wage, I get it. The reason why I get it is because it is designed, everybody. The system is designed to have you in a position to where you feel like you are making just enough money to stay afloat and not drown. That is designed to do it that way. It's not designed to make you financially free. Any of you who's working at a job talking about a living wage and you're wondering why the job has not made you financially free yet, I'm telling you, you're asking the wrong question. They're not supposed to make you financially free. They're supposed to keep you financially enslaved. Why? Because then they can control you. They can tell you what to do and you can't do shit about it. Y'all thought it was supposed to be different? This is what it's supposed to do. They've been grooming you for this ever since you entered kindergarten. Everybody. They've been grooming you for this since you were 5 years old. They tell you to follow the instructions, sit down, shut up, do what we say to do, follow all the rules, and we'll give you a good grade. Then when you got out of school and you got a job, they just swapped out a report card for a paycheck. That's it. Only difference between school and a job is that they swapped out the report card for a paycheck. That's the only difference. And as long as you keep following the rules, you keep getting the check. They don't want you to have the power to walk away from them, because if you walk away from them, then they lose their power, because their business only runs if they got a bunch of workers. Now, they can replace you with another worker because there's going to be enough automatons and people who don't understand these concepts. They'll always be able to replace you. The problem is not that you need to get back at them. The problem is you just need to make yourself, you need to put yourself in a position to where you have the power rather than they have the power. You're not going to change the whole world. See, Bernie Sanders trying to change the whole world and the whole system. More power to him. That's what he wants to do. I wouldn't sign up for that job. He signed up for it. He's 83 years old and he's in politics. I guess that's what he's supposed to do. And he has his daughter, AOC, coming up next. If that's what they want to do, they can go do it. I wouldn't suggest you sign up for that job. I suggest all you do is make sure that you're not the one being used. Because there's always going to be people getting used in life. All right, what's that song called? Sweet Dreams. All right, some of them want to be used. Some want to be abused. There's always going to be people who want to be used. You're not going to change everybody's mind. I wouldn't sign up for that course. But just make sure it's not you. That said, let's see what we got in the comments. Ed Sports, you made it over to YouTube. O-Dog says, school is mostly theory. Life is mostly application. If you can apply the critical thinking you use to solve real life problems, you can create a business. Pretty much. And as long as you can sell your solutions. Let's not forget about that part. School is what I call a closed book test. Life is an open book test. I know when you're in school and every once in a while a teacher would say you have an open book test. You can just open a book and look through anything in the book to answer the questions to the test. And everybody's all happy because they're like, that should be easy. It's an open book test. Well, newsflash, all of life is an open book test, everybody. All of life is an open book test. Any problem you face in life, you can open any book you want. You call anybody you want. You can resource any information you want. You can go on Google and type in anything you want to solve that problem. Life is an open book test. Well, how easy is it? Because when you're in school, an open book test was supposed to mean it's easy, right? The problem with an open book test is, first of all, you got to decide which book to open. Number two, you got to know which page to turn to. Number three, you have to know you found the right information. Number four, you still have to apply it. See, these are 4 problems with open book tests that nobody talks about. And life is an open book test. O-Dog said, the reason why people don't like sales is because people have a grave fear of rejection. Sales is belief in your product and presentation. You're always selling something. Yeah, that's a good point. One of the big challenges with sales is reluctance to try to call reluctance because you don't want to get turned down. O-Dog said, that's how you present yourself. How you present yourself is very important. Self-awareness is key. How the market perceives you will determine your success is true of a business, a job, or interview, or dating. All agreed. People think network marketing is a scam. Working a job just never spend time with your family to die is a scam. Spending time in traffic, going to work, not getting paid for that is a scam. Yes, some people think network marketing is a scam because the way it works for or on them could end up being a scam because so few people succeed in it. That very few people succeed in it. That's why it gets a bad reputation. And I mean, so few people do succeed. That is a real thing, but that doesn't mean nobody can succeed. And also doesn't mean you can't learn from the experience. I learned a lot from the experience. You have to sell yourself in an interview. Also facts. O-Dog says, funny that many people don't understand personal finance, yet they want to opine on national budget and how and what the government should spend money on. Well, I mean, that's their right because the government technically is of, for, and by the people. So I get it. I get what you're saying, but at the same time, I get why people have an opinion on it because, I mean, it is supposed to be for us. If it's for us, then people are allowed to comment on it. Courtney, I guess you hopped over to TikTok. Courtney said online, I see the weapon to your head. I don't know if I can say that GUN word on here. RD says, out of detention, I'm flipping over to the top. So some of y'all just like TikTok better than Instagram. What's the difference? I mean, well, for me, it's not really that much of a difference, but I'm glad to be back on here. Shug, good morning. Shina H, good morning. Good to see some of you again. Some of you I haven't seen all this last week since I've been incarcerated. I've been in TikTok incarceration. Sherry, good to see you. Can y'all just like the live, please? We're at 5,000 likes. Shug said, they ain't loyal. Yes. So I was saying the actual title, Shug, these 304s ain't loyal. I said it like 6 times. And then the 6th time that I said it, my live got ended and I got suspended for a week. So I guess TikTok didn't like me saying that. The problem I have with it, TikTok, the TikTok moderators who are listening to this right now, I'm talking about people who actually work at TikTok, is y'all should have just gave me a warning the first time or the second time. I would have stopped saying it. They didn't give me a warning. They just kicked me off with no warning. That's the part that annoys me, because if they would have warned me, I would have stopped saying it. But they didn't warn me, so I thought it was okay until I got kicked out. Renee said, I literally laughed out loud. 14. Yeah, I've literally been suspended 14 times on TikTok. That is very true. Courtney said, got my regular view back. LOL. Glad. I'm glad. Brovid said, you are so much more informative. Don't with everything, but at least I can understand. Well, that's my goal. Brovid, 1985. I don't need anyone to agree with everything that I say, but you should never be unclear as to what I'm saying and why I'm saying it. That's where I'm at. Spike says Todd Bridges. Do I look like Todd Bridges? Most people don't even know who Todd Bridges is. Spike, you need a more, what's the word? A more current point of reference. Most people don't even know who you're talking about. Kat said, I did the same thing when I was a single mom. Same thing as what? Good morning. Who's that?
It's me.
It's you? Who's me?
It's you.
Good to see you. Come here. You want to join?
Sure.
Okay.
Not enough work to do.
You got what?
I got some work to do.
Are you coming back? Okay. Well, he's about to join. He went back. So Kat said, I lived on $65 in groceries a week as a single mom in the 80s. Yeah, well, my mom, I don't know how much the budget was, but I knew she was counting. And my mom wasn't a single mom, but she did have a budget. So Linda said, the envelope and I always go good shopping. Yeah, so that's a common thing. So a lot of you are relating to that. I didn't know if anybody else did it. Will, thanks for the follow. Kat said they used to in the 70s and the 80s. Layla said you need money. Well, everybody needs money. You need money for food, clothing, shelter, of course. Queen said to set up these kids to fail in the first place too. Well, they set you up to be part of the system. I mean, you could technically succeed in the system and make it all the way through and retire. Technically, you can do that. But you just don't have as much freedom as others. And not everybody's even looking for that freedom. That's the thing. I talked about this earlier that y'all didn't hear it if you only heard me since I turned on TikTok. Not everybody's looking for that level of freedom, because understand that level of autonomy that comes with being an entrepreneur also comes with a high level of responsibility and accountability. And not everybody wants that. And autonomy, that freedom to do whatever you want to do, means you are also fully accountable and fully responsible for everything that happens when you do what you want to do. And that sounds good when you're thinking about it and talking about it. Is a whole different ballgame when you're actually living it. So again, not everybody wants that. That's why not everybody's an entrepreneur. Not everybody should be. Shirk says, school teaches us how to trade time for money. Yes, it does. It prepares you for that. And again, you can succeed, quote unquote, doing that as long as you don't get fired. I mean, you can have a whole career just doing that. Marlene said it used to be called home economics back in the 70s. I remember home economics. When I was in middle school, which was in the 90s, we did have a home economics class. I remember being in that class. We had a home ec class, but it was starting to get phased out. I don't think they have that class anymore, but we did used to have that. And home ec, we would do things like, one of the things I remember we did like sewing. We were all sewing, like using a sewing machine, like literally using sewing machines in class. This is 95, maybe something like that. Linda says schools used to teach basic. Home ecs taught cooking, sewing, basic accounting. Okay, see, we weren't doing all that accounting stuff. We weren't doing cooking. We might have cooked a couple things, but it wasn't super. It wasn't delineated by gender. It wasn't like the girls do this and the boys do that. It was everybody doing the same thing. So it was already starting to change by the time I got it. Coach Jackie said because they're trying to keep people poor. Pretty much. Well, that's what the system does. I don't know if they're doing it outwardly, consciously, but that's what the system does. That we can agree. BK said earning money ain't everything. Technically, you are correct, but earning money is a lot. Nate said, because teachers get paid significantly less than what they're worth, and how are you going to have someone teach you to make or compound your money when the top athletes are making more? Well, top athletes, if it's a top athlete might make $100 million. Most people don't make that, no matter how good you are at anything, even when you run a business. Nate, I get what you're saying directionally, and you say teachers get paid significantly less than their worth. That term that's a tricky term when you say less than their worth. How do you determine your worth? The way I determine worth, I'm more of an absolutist on these kind of things, and that your worth is what the market will bear, and whatever you accept, that's your value. If you accept it, then that's what you're setting as your price. So if you say your price is $10 and then I offer you $5 and you accept $5, then your value is not $10. Your value is $5 because you accepted $5. Now, if you think your value is $10, then what you should do is reject my offer of $5 and either negotiate with me and sell me on why you're worth 10, or you go somewhere else and get $10. But if I offer you 5 and you accept 5, your value is 5 because that's what you took. You can't accept $5 and then walk around saying that your value is $10. That doesn't make any sense. So I'm not saying that's what you said, Nate, but a lot of people say things like teachers get paid less than what they're worth. And I say, what are they worth? I mean, if you accept a job that pays this much money and you accept it and you keep working, well, that's how much you accept it. Who am I to say that you're worth more than that when you have accepted this? This is the situation. And the challenging part of this is, again, comes right back to what I just said, accountability and ownership. If you think you're worth more than what you're currently getting, then you have to take the risk, if you will, of walking away from what you're currently getting. And then you got to go out into the open marketplace and prove that you are worth the higher amount that you say you're worth. And if the market will give it to you, then you proved your point. And if the market doesn't give it to you, then you didn't prove your point. This is the reality of how it works. Let's see. Axe says, I don't know what you're referring to. Gary Gray says, they will only control you as far as you let them. Be smart with your money and they have less power. Yes, you're correct. That's correct. They will control you as far as you let them. Well, a lot of people don't understand, what we're talking about here. If you don't understand it, then you can never start to take control of the situation. Many people are completely unaware of what's going on. Sherry, thank you for the gift. Can we get the 10,000 likes, please, on TikTok? E92 Pat said, I just turned 18. I'm baffled at life. I understand. When I was 18, I was baffled at life, too. I just didn't even know I was baffled. So actually, you're in a good position, E92, because at least you know you're baffled. Now, if you didn't know you were baffled, then you'd be in a worse position. But at least you're aware. So you're aware that something is missing. If you're aware that something is missing, then you have potential to fix the situation. So I would suggest you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. That's what I tell you to do. Courtney said, not on TikTok. You can't. Yeah. Certain things you can't say on TikTok. That is very true. Kat said, societal worth. Education is also in high demand. What kind of education are we talking to, Kat? Depends on what you're referring to. E92 said, I read that. Okay, then even if you go get a job, are you going to college? What you doing, E92? Are you going to college? Are you going to college? You going to trade school? You starting a business? What are you doing now that you're 18? You have a lot of opportunity. EPAT said you had the 48 laws of power. Yeah, the 48 laws will make more sense once you start engaging with more people. When you get to about 30, the 48 laws of power make a whole lot of sense. 30 years of age, I mean. At 18, you might not have enough experience for the 48 laws to make sense. You may understand it theoretically, but you got to kind of live some life to really understand why the things he says make sense. Elsa, thank you for the love so much gift on there. I appreciate that. Well, heck, 60. Good to see you. Good to see you too. I'm out of jail. I just got released from jail. I'm like Diddy. Diddy didn't get released from jail. We're going to go back to talking about Diddy. I'm going to finish my thoughts on the Diddy case and all that tomorrow. We're going to do a whole live talking about Diddy starting at 8 o'clock tomorrow on all platforms, as long as I don't get kicked off of TikTok today, which I anticipate will not happen. I learned through my time in TikTok jail. I had a lot of time to think. And I learned that I got to be very careful with loose language on TikTok. There are certain things you just can't get loose talking about on TikTok. They'll suspend you. And I was looking for the warning. They gave me a warning. I wouldn't have kept saying the phrase that I kept saying. The 304s ain't loyal. But because they didn't warn me, I thought it was okay. So TikTok, I got an issue with you for not telling me that that wasn't okay. If you would have just told me, we wouldn't have had a problem. Chelsea says everybody should learn sales. You can do anything if you know sales. That's right. That's right. Sensei says, so are you rehabilitated? In a way, I am rehabilitated. So I think I'm going to be a success story of the incarceration system. See, actually, I'm actually both. I'm both a success story of the TikTok incarceration system, and I'm part of the recidivism rate because I've been suspended 14 times. So it's like going to jail and then you get arrested again. So I got this long rap sheet of arrests and incarceration bids done on TikTok, while at the same time, every time I get incarcerated, I learn something new. So I don't know, which one is that? Is that a success story or is that a failure story of the TikTok justice system? I don't know. I think you look at it both ways. But tomorrow we are going to get back to talking about P. Diddy. I'll tell y'all while I'm waiting to see if anybody has any other comments. Things we are going to talk about moving forward. These are guaranteed to come. They announced that Pam Bondi announced that there are no evidence of a client list from the Epstein files. We will talk about that. This is not only one day, by the way. Each of these topics get their own individual day. The floods in Texas, we got to talk about that because people are some way trying to make that about Trump. The one big beautiful bill did actually pass. I don't know if people know about that. It did pass. I believe it was the day before the 4th of July. Same day I went to TikTok jail. That bill did pass. So we will talk about that. I'm going to finish talking about the Diddy verdict because there's a bunch of things I didn't get to say that day that I got suspended. We got to talk about Donald Trump's alligator Alcatraz. I don't know if y'all heard about that. This is basically a detention camp, ICE detention camp down in Miami that is basically in Everglades swamps and it's surrounded by alligators. And we'll talk about that. Joe Biden's doctor. Did y'all hear about Joe Biden's doctor? He got called to testify in front of a committee in D.C. and he refused to testify and he pled the fifth. It was basically blocks you from incriminating yourself. Now, why would a doctor be worried about incriminating himself? He didn't testify. So all of those topics are definitely coming. We may talk about feminism, how it's ruining sports. We may talk about these Democratic governors who got together and sued the United States government over their use of the military with the ICE whole situation. We might get to that one. But these one, Biden's doctor, alligator Alcatraz, the Diddy verdict, Trump one big beautiful bill, the Texas floods, Epstein files, those are all guaranteed coming. All of those are guaranteed in the future. Sensei said reputation boosts learning. Yeah, so you keep going to jail, you keep learning, allegedly. I don't think that's what happens when most people go to jail, though. I think most people who go to jail ain't learning a damn thing. But every time I go to TikTok jail, I learn one new thing that I can't say on TikTok or I can't do on TikTok. Once I got suspended on TikTok because I changed the link in my profile and they said the link in your profile violates our terms of service. So they kicked me completely off TikTok. They banned my whole account. But then I filed an appeal and it took like 3 days and then it came back. So TikTok has some arcane rules here that they don't have humans on top of this stuff. So this is how you get the nonsense every once in a while. So while I'm waiting again, before I get to some more comments, those of you who don't have your copy of my most popular book, it is this one right here. It's called The Third Day, The Decision That Separates the Pros from the Amateurs. This book is all about whatever you do for work. Everybody has a job. Whatever you do, there's a job. And there are some days you don't feel like showing up to your job. Some days you really don't feel like working. That day is called The Third Day. I created a whole systematic process about how to show up and give a great effort even when you don't feel like it. That's what this book is about. It's called The Third Day. This is my most popular book. Get a free copy of the book. Just cover the shipping. Go to thirddaybook.com. The link is right there. It's very small. Most of you may not even see it there. If you go to that link right there, thirddaybook.com, you get a copy of this book. It looks just like this. And if you go to the link in my bio, we have a page that has links to all my books. So if you can't remember that URL, all you got to do is just go to the link in my profile on TikTok and you'll see it. You'll see links to all my books. So El Pat said, you don't know yet. You're trying to figure it out. That's okay. Well, most people do EPAT is they go to college for 4 years while they figure it out. So you're on track. My situation is unique because I got jammed up for 21 days, actually right before I graduated. Jammed up meaning what? You got arrested? Or incarcerated. But I did end up graduating, so now I'm trash. I'm trying to, I think you mean, move forward, kind of. What do you mean, kind of? You're kind of trying to move forward or you are? Right now, I'm looking for a job so I can stack up. But I'm trying to have the right mindset going into life. Well, here's what I would suggest you do, E92 Pat, because in the world that we're in today, here's one thing you can do. I'm not telling you specifically in an action plan because you're going to figure that out. What you need to do is pick, like, I would say no more than, I would say 3 people, maybe 5, at the most 5. People who are, I'm assuming you're a male, pick 5 men whose mindset and approach and just the way they put themselves out there on the internet you connect with and you like. Any 5, I don't care who they are. And they're out there on the internet. And then you follow them on all the socials and subscribe to their stuff, whether it's their podcasts, get on their email lists, whatever emails they send out, just all the free stuff that they have, connect to all their free stuff, and then just consume their stuff like all day. You get a free education doing that. And whatever 5 people you like. It could be a mindset person. It could be an athlete or probably a former athlete because a current athlete probably doesn't have enough content. It could be an entrepreneur person. They can be talking about AI. They can talk about finance. They can have an interview podcast, whatever. Just people who have somebody who has a lot of content and they've been putting out a lot of stuff to where you got hours and hours of their material to go through. Pick like 3 to 5 people and just consume all of their stuff. And you start to absorb their way of thinking and the things that they talk about. And that way you get a free education without going to college. Because a lot of the stuff they're talking about, these people who I'm describing, and people like myself and many others, I'm not saying I had to be one of them, but many others out there, they're telling you about things that they learned from actual real life experience as opposed to the theory you're going to get from a college professor. And it costs you a whole lot less money to get it off TikTok, YouTube, and podcasts than it will cost for you to go sit in a college classroom and learn it from some teacher who doesn't even, on certain subjects, doesn't even know what they're talking about. And they can't tell you about the real life things you're going to deal with, assuming you're not trying to be a college professor. Now, if you want to be a college professor, go to college. You get hands-on experience watching the professors to show you exactly how to do it. If you don't want to be a college professor, or you don't want to be a lawyer or a doctor, places where or an engineer, there are some industries where you got to have a college degree. But if you're not trying to do one of those things, then I would suggest you get a real life education from real life people who are giving you the game virtually for free or for very cheap by simply being on the internet. Most of them, even the people who I just described, the people who are out there, the influencers, if you will, content creators, most of them have some way you can get into their world for less than $100 a month. So for anyone who's just trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, that's the route that I would suggest. Only way you should go to college if you're trying to do something professionally that requires a college degree, like super requires it, meaning like a doctor, lawyer, engineer, something like that, or you're trying to be a college professor, or if you're playing a sport and you need to go to school to get your seasoning so you could work on your game playing your sport in college. Other than that, you don't really need college. Personally, that's what I think. Elsa said, because you're a smart man. Well, thank you, Elsa. I appreciate that. Billy, appreciate you. Thank you. You like the tie? Me too. EPAT said, I was thinking air traffic controller. Well, just find out what the requirements are to be an air traffic controller. Do you need to go to school? Do you need to go to trade school, college, etc.? Just find out what the requirements are. Chelsea said, Facebook groups are great for learning and leaning on people learning the same thing as you. Okay, fair enough. Facebook groups is one. It depends on it depends on who the people are. And some people have communities in other places. It may not be on Facebook. Some people have their communities on something like Telegram, WhatsApp. They might have their own community, like on their own website. I don't really mess with Facebook groups like that, but I get what you're saying. Directionally, I agree with that. You can get into a community, but sometimes the community is on somebody's own website, not on Facebook. I personally don't like building groups on Facebook because I don't want Facebook controlling anything that has to do with my business. So I mess with these social media apps, but I mess with them just enough to do what I need to do, and then I stay away from them. It's the reason why I tell you, go get my book, go get on the link in my profile, which takes you to workonyourgame.live. The reason I tell you to do that, because I want to get you off the app. I don't want to have to use the app to get in touch with you. So any of you who missed me in the last week because I was in TikTok jail, what you need to do is go to the link in my profile, which is workonyourgame.live. When you get there, you're going to get to a page that looks like this. And the first thing we're going to ask you for is your email address. Put your email address in right here, and you could be on my email list. So you always have a way of hearing from me directly, and you don't have to go through social media to do it. So make sure you get on my email list by going to workonyourgame.live. That link is in my profile. TikTok's not going to like that I just said that, but this is the reality. I'm okay. Good morning. Good to see you. Keep on living says Secret Service agent gets suspended a year later. It's hilarious. Suspended for what? Spin said, "Good morning. Good morning to you." So what we're doing here, folks, we're just having a little bit of open discussion because this is basically my welcome home party from coming home from jail. I was in TikTok jail for a week. They suspended me because of a phrase that I kept saying when I was referring to the star witnesses in the Diddy trial. The star witnesses who pretty much failed to get what they wanted to get happened to Diddy in that trial. But we'll see. We still don't know we don't know the verdict yet. Not excuse me. We know the verdict. We don't know the sentence yet. Diddy's going to get sentenced. Some people are saying he might get 10 years. I've seen some people saying maybe he'll get the whole 20. I heard a lawyer this morning actually say he might get only 2 to 4 years. He already has time served of damn near a year already. And it's going to be over a year by the time he actually gets sentenced if they wait till October for the sentencing. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But I'm taking questions right now. So I got like 14 minutes here, about 14 minutes. If you got a question, go ahead and put it in the comments. I'll take a couple questions. It doesn't have to be on any specific topic. I'll take questions right now. We got 14 minutes, and then we'll wrap this up. And if there are no questions, then I'll wrap it up now. While I'm waiting for y'all to come up with the questions, I do these live streams Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern. So it's 9:30 Eastern right now. So you can adjust your times as necessary. So if you're on the West Coast, we're 3 hours ahead of you. Just wake up early. Or you can watch the replay. The replays of all these live streams are on YouTube, by the way. So my YouTube channel is linked in my profile on TikTok. So if you want to watch the replays and you can alter the speed and all that, you can put this on 2x speed and listen to it on YouTube. My Instagram is on there as well. My Rumble, X, Facebook, LinkedIn. And what's the other ones that I'm on? All these apps are on all these links are in the link that I just showed you, workonyourgame.live. I'm just looking over on, shout out to X. When I go live consistently on X, it looks like the numbers are slowly going up on X. Slowly they're going up. But shout out to people watching on X. X cameras over here. So shout out to y'all over there on X. I'm okay said TikTok jail. The social liberals were really feeling stupid last week, huh? I don't know. I don't know if it was the social liberals. I think it was TikTok. I think TikTok did this one. I don't really know. We don't know who actually did it. They don't tell you. This is one of the things about ending up in jail. You don't know who actually is the one who called the cops. You just know the cops showed up and they arrested you. That's all you know. So that's all I know about what happened with me going into TikTok jail for a week. One thing I do know for sure is that when they suspended me, I immediately filed an appeal because like the last 6 or 7 times I got suspended, I appealed and I won the appeal. But this time I lost the appeal. And they tell you in like 2 minutes. So within 2 minutes, they said, no, you lost the appeal. You're suspended. So you can go live again in a week. So that was last Thursday and here we are. So that's how I got suspended on TikTok. So Organic Bounteous said, you can't spell red hat without hatred. Where'd you get that one from? Is that the new one that they're throwing around? Organic Bounteous, that joke is like 10 years old. People start saying that about Trump in 2015. You gotta come up with some new material. Lacey River, good morning, good to see you, and thank you for the love you so much badge over on TikTok. So we're at 14,000 likes, folks. I told you I would stay here and take a couple questions if there is any. But I'm just letting you all know, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern is when these lives normally happen. Tomorrow we'll be back at 8 a.m. The topic tomorrow, I can I'm not even going to guarantee anything. My expected intended topic tomorrow is we're going to finish talking about the Diddy case, what happened, why it happened, and my overall thoughts on it, because there are a lot of things I didn't get a chance to finish saying before I was so rudely interrupted and suspended by TikTok. So we're going to finish that tomorrow, most likely. But I must offer the disclaimer that if anything crazy happens in the news today, then that will bump the Diddy trial off of the docket, and then Diddy will get to on Monday. So if something crazy happens today in the news, then tomorrow we'll talk about that. So I'm looking over on X, because sometimes I look on X just to see what's trending and what people are talking about. So so Japan set a new internet speed record. 1.02 petabits per second. How fast is that? 1.02 petabits per second. I never even heard of a petabit. So I heard of kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes, terabytes. I guess a petabyte is the next one after What is a petabyte? Anybody know what a petabyte is? A petabit. Japan set a new internet speed record, 1.02 petabits per second. This allows for the theoretical download. So here's what it says. It says this allows for the theoretical download of the entire Netflix catalog in 1 second. That's crazy. At 1.02 petabits per second, you could download the entire Netflix catalog in 1 second. This is accomplished using a 19-core fiber optic cable. I don't know what that is. Showcasing Japan's leadership in telecommunications technology. This development was highlighted by various reports and discussions, emphasizing the significant technological advancement and its implications for future data transmission capabilities. So first of all, let's find out what a petabit is, because I never heard of a petabit. Anybody you know what a petabit is? I'm thinking it's the next thing after a gigabyte, but maybe I'm wrong. So a petabyte is 7.5 gigabytes. Is that right? Yeah, it's like 7.5. Yeah, these are. So in terms of megabytes, a pegabyte is 8e plus 9. So what is that? Like 8 jillion? Let's see. Gigabytes. The petabyte is 1e plus 6 gigabytes. All right, this is too. I don't like this. 10 to the 15th power bytes of digital information. So there are 1,000 terabytes or 1,000,000 gigabytes in a pegabyte. All right, so there you go. 1,000,000 gigabytes equals 1 petabyte, approximately. 1,000,000 gigabytes equals. So right now I got Google Workspace, and I think I get 10 total gigabytes. You get 1,000,000 gigabytes in a pegabyte. 1,000 petabytes make up 1 exabyte. I never heard of an exabyte. So O-Dog said a terabyte is after a gigabyte. Right, yeah, you're right. So it's gigabyte, then terabyte, then petabyte. So 1,000 terabytes equals 1 petabyte. So a DVD usually is like 4 gigs. 745 million floppy disks for 1 petabyte. Some of y'all know what a floppy disk is, but that's a petabyte. A petabyte's worth of data stored in flash drives will stretch over 92 football fields if they were 1 gig apiece. So that's what happened in Japan, the petabyte. This is just a trending topic on X. And then Kristi Noem is trending. I don't know why she's trending, but Kristi Noem's usually trending because, well, people get mad because she looks like she puts on full makeup and stuff before she goes on camera. Seems like image matters a lot to Kristi Noem. That's probably true. She probably does put on full makeup before she goes on camera, but anyway, I didn't see anything trending yet, but I got to look around on X to the XTR. So they're making up speeds. Well, they're making them up. If that is actually a real speed, then that is a real thing. Like I said, I never heard of petabytes, me either. But now we know it. I'm okay said it's still not light speed. Yeah, they got to catch up. Martin said, I think it's 1,000 terabytes. Yes, you're right. That's what it is. So that's Japan. They got petabytes. And the next one is an exabyte. So now we just got to wait for the exabyte to come next. All right, everybody, let's wrap this one up. I will see you all tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. We're probably going to talk about the rest of this Diddy trial, pending nothing crazy happening that I decide to bump that off the top of the list. So I'll see y'all tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern. Topic, probably the Diddy trial. If you need anything from me, just send me a direct message. My EA does watch the DMs, and she'll get to you on whatever app you're on. Her email address is on some of these applications. I'll see y'all tomorrow morning. We are out of here. I'm out of jail, folks. So let's make sure we stay out of jail. We stay free. All right, everybody stay free. Don't get arrested. Don't go to court. Don't go to jail. I'll see y'all Friday morning. We out of here. Work on your game.